Yesterday there was a vote by the Major League Baseball committee on who should be inducted into the Hall of Fame from a particular area. One of the players who was up for consideration and unfortunately wasn't chosen was Minnie Minoso. And it reminded me of the debt I owe Minnie Minoso. Minnie Minoso was the first African-Latin baseball player. And in 1954 in Memphis, Tennessee, a town I was born in and a town in the southern United States that was especially a part of the Jim Crow era, I went to a baseball game, an exhibition baseball game, and I was on crutches because I'd had polio. And I had a Chicago White Sox cap on and a Chicago White Sox T-shirt. And a player came to give me a baseball from the opposing team, the St. Louis Cardinals. And I thanked him, and I went and told my father, and we came down to thank him. And he said, "Don't thank me, thank that player over there." He was the blackest player on the field, number 9, Minnie Minoso. He didn't feel comfortable in 1955 to give me a baseball. And yet he was the player with the most compassionate heart and humanity on the field, because that was the segregated South. Minnie Minoso became my hero, and I followed his career and became friends with him. We exchanged gifts when he came to Memphis and I went to Chicago. And in 1960, when he came to Memphis, he was staying at the Lorraine Motel, the segregated African-American hotel in Memphis, because African, Cuban, Latin players, African-Americans weren't allowed at the Peabody Hotel where the other players were. I couldn't believe that my baseball hero and a great all-star was staying at the Lorraine, which happens to be where Dr. King was murdered. But that's where he had to stay. I learned about segregation from living in Memphis and from being befriended by Minnie Minoso. The insanity of segregation and the separation of people by race. That period of Jim Crow and previous slavery, which consisted in this country for 250 years of slavery and 100 and some odd years of Jim Crow, still pervades this country. There are lingering consequences which must be dealt with. Mr. Schiff well addressed them. Much must be done in law enforcement and criminal justice, but also in education and opportunities for jobs, which people don't have today in the South and many other places in inner cities. So as I think about Minnie Minoso and I think about segregation and the effect it's had on America, America's original sin was slavery. We haven't overcome it. Some write about it and get recognition. People read their books. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote in The Atlantic. Edward Baptist has written a book about the benefits that America got from the slave trade and how many people made money from it, shipping cotton, making clothes, insuring the slave trade. It was the great economic benefit of this country and made this country great, all on slavery. Edward Baptist writes it well. And Michelle Alexander writes of the new Jim Crow and the incarceration rates of African Americans. That is wrongfully high, and if you're African American, the likelihood you're going to be arrested and incarcerated is so much greater for living in the same society and doing the same things. We must put an end to discrimination in all its forms and fashions. In the criminal justice system, sentencing reform needs to take place. In the criminal justice system, we need to see that law enforcement agencies and prosecutions of law enforcement officers are done transparently and fairly and justly, and that Americans continue to have faith that this is the home of the land, the home of the free and the land of the brave, and one that people should get equal justice in, as was planned by our founding fathers, but never quite implemented. I yield back the balance of my